Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the 613 Sports Podcast. It's returned, but it's now on YouTube because why not? And today we got a special guest with us. It's our first really collaboration. Brandon from Sens Talk. You guys know him. Sens Talk on YouTube, bringing you all the Sens content. Place to go, really, to find any Sens content. Brandon, how are you doing?
That's what people say, man. Thank you for having me on the show. I've been a longtime fan of the blog, and it's great to see y'all finally going onto the YouTube platform. We've needed for a while a lot more Ottawa, fans to get onto the YouTube platform. I've primarily been the only one, so it's great to see some other people joining the platform.
Yep. And obviously, Sens haven't really been in action for a long time, but
No.
as usual, some news always kind of leaks, and whenever it leaks, it's always about the same person. Once again, Melnick's in the news, and basically because the Ottawa coaches weren't being paid.
Yeah, that when that story broke a couple of days ago from Frank Cervelli, I've heard rumblings that the Senators were cutting above average salaries. Like majority of the NHL was cutting salaries to 20%, but I was told it was more than 20%. I was thinking 35, 40%, which is still more than it should be. But when Frank Cervelli brought up the point that it was at 50%, that's half of the salary for these NHL coaches, scouts, and executives, etc. That's a terrible look for the league. That's a terrible look for the organization, and it's a terrible look for Eugene Melnyk because, especially for DJ Smith. Let's take a look at DJ Smith for a second. This is his first year in the Sanders organization. He hasn't even completed a full season with this organization, and in the span of 1 year, there's a lot of success on the ice, in development aspects. And then he ends the year on a bad note with half his salary being cut. And listen, I understand times are tough. I'm not one to judge. But when you're cutting half the salary of your employees, when you have probably the smallest hockey operations, team in the National Hockey League, there's a level of concern there. And when Pierre McGuire, this is switch the subject for a quick second, when Pierre McGuire the other day went on TSN 690, I believe, and said that there will be a few teams that will be sold. Now, I'm not saying Ottawa will be sold. I don't know who they'd be sold to. But with Ottawa cutting half of the salary for these executives and coaches, Ottawa being brought up into that consideration for being sold to another owner should not shock anyone, especially after the latest news towards the organization.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk on Sens Twitter, thanks to Sens Chirp.
Yeah.
Is there really anyone who wants to buy the team? That was the main question. And right now, in the current situation, I don't know really who's going to buy the team. And, to be fair, Melnyk, yes, it's been a tough situation. Ottawa was dead last in attendance, I think averaging 12,000. So he was not getting a lot of money during the season. And now with Corona, I understand. But at the same time, you're an owner, and you need to pay your people. And if you don't have enough money, you got to sell the team. But on the other hand, now there's a lot of talk about relocation rumors. Do you think it's possible Sens could relocate?
Not a chance. If you look at the history of the Ottawa Senators and the organization itself, you also need to look past from the organization. You also need to look at the market and the overall population of that market. The majority of the people that live in the city of Ottawa. Now, many people, if you're not a member or a native of Ottawa, you wouldn't know this. Is a lot of it's government workers. A lot of it is, in the government sector, not a lot of private sector workers, a lot of people working in the government. And if you look between 2000, 2014 to 2015, and it's no coincidence, after Alfredson left in 2013, attendance obviously dipped because that was a huge blow to the organization and was one of the first big blows ever since the sequence of falling down the hill, especially the last few years that's been rapid. But if you look at the history of the Ottawa Senators and their attendance numbers, between 2000 and 2015, they were top 15 for nearly every single year. Half those seasons, at least, they were top 5, averaging 19 to 20,000 fans per game. At least 90. I remember there was years where it was at above 99% capacity, even above 100% at a couple of seasons. So what I'm trying to say with the government workers after 2015, there's a Phoenix pay issue where a lot of government workers were not getting paid. So obviously, I believe family is more important than anything in the world, and I think many of y'all would agree with that. So it's either going to Sens games to pay an owner who clearly doesn't really care about the community too much based off of some comments, or feed your family. So obviously the family man or woman, whoever, is going to feed their family. So that helped dip attendance. And then you also have to look at the off-ice issues where Melnick threatened relocation, Carlson, the whole Carlson trade fiasco, half the entire team from 2017 that went to the Eastern Conference Final getting traded. The only players left from that team are Borjetsky, Anderson, and Bobby Ryan, and 2 out of those 3 will be gone after this season. So if you look at the attendance, yes. In a normal context, a 12,000 per game attendance average would warrant relocation. But based off of the parameters of what's going on right now in Ottawa with the owner, the ridicule that the owner is getting, the split between the fan base and the organization itself, and just the overall collapse of the organization, I don't think any team would be able to successfully navigate those waters and not lose any fans. So if you look at the Ottawa Senators fan base, it's still pretty strong. There's still a lot of people that want to support this team, which tells you all you need to know about the testament of this city and its fan base. So to keep it very simple, the Senators will not move. But what I would warn, though, is if the Senators are sold to a team in the next few years, be cautious, because what happened with the Montreal Expos could happen to the Ottawa Senators, where an owner buys a team to run them to the ground and then sell them, and then not sell them, but then move them at a low value to get high reward, if that makes sense.
So on that point, actually, if we get a new owner,
mm-hmm.
do you think fans are going to immediately all come back? Or do you think it's gone to the point where fans have just had enough and it's going to take a lot for them to get back to the arena?
Well, you got to look at, like, I'll look at the CFL, for example, here with the Ottawa Red Blacks, where the Renegades didn't really do well. And, of course, the Rough Riders had a very successful history. You look at the way the league and the fans of Ottawa accepted that team and supported that team and still supports that team. Now, of course, with the Ottawa Senators, with the Red Blacks, they came back. And I think the Senators fans will come back too. Senators, or Ottawa fans in general, are a very loyal bunch. There's not a lot of us, but there are enough of us to support a major league team, in my opinion, and the stats will show that from history. But to keep it very simple, I honestly think it will take some time for Senators fans to come back and trust this organization. There's no contract for fans to have to stick with this team. With the amount of BS that the fan base has had to go through the years, and the amount of turmoil between the fan base and the organization, which is not normal, because the customer is always right, especially in a situation like this. So will fans come back? Yes. Will it take some time? Yes. If you look at old Senator videos from 2012, 2013, the fan enthusiasm was at an all-time high. If you notice, after 2013, the numbers in attendance go down, and the enthusiasm goes down, because that's because of Daniel Alfredsson and the overall feeling of the organization. The fans leaving is not sudden because of Melnick and the Melnick out campaign. It's been a gradual decline ever since 2013, and it's really just exploded onto the scene ever since past 2017. And we can go on for days about what's gone on the last 3 years. So basically, it will take an ownership group or sole owner, to come up with a marketing strategy, come up with a great marketing group, prove to the fans that they're willing to spend money, prove to the fans that they're going to re-sign their players, and prove to the fans that they can trust and actually financially commit to this franchise. Once the fans are convinced that they can financially, most importantly, once the fans are convinced they can financially contribute and support this franchise, things will be better. But that takes a lot of marketing and a lot of trust building between the fan base and its organization.
Yeah, I honestly think until the Sens make the playoffs again, I don't see fans really rushing back. And I really do think that LeBreton, a new arena, is going to be a key part of this, because I think fans have just had enough of Canada, driving out, middle of winter on a Wednesday night to go to Canada to watch a team that's not really making the playoffs. Like, why, right?
I think on top of that, you got to envy teams like the New York Rangers. You got to envy teams like the Edmonton Oilers. Like, how down would you be, as a university student? We're both university students. Yep. Go to the Byward, get a couple of brews, and then go to a game with the boys. That sounds fun. But in Ottawa, you got a bus in cold-ass weather.
Mm-hmm.
I know these are first-world problems. But once again, if you're committed to spending the money, it's got to be easy for me to spend that money. I shouldn't have to go to my way. That once again shows how loyal this fan base is. So if you look at that whole Le Breton thing, Ottawa desperately for the financial viability of this organization, regardless if it's Melnick or not. For the Senators to stay in Ottawa, it starts with a new arena, and I do believe the Senators can't build a new arena, then there will be relocation talk, because the team can't stay afloat in Canada. The economics have just shown that already.
No, I mean, look at TD Place in Lansdowne, how all the teams who play there, it's perfect for just walking. If you have all the bars set up.
Yep.
Look at Red Blacks last season. They have trash, but packed stadium. The stadium was packed, 17,000. Why? Because it's easy. It's a fun thing, right? Watching hockey, you go there to have fun, not only just about the game.
Yeah.
You go to Canada, all you do is watch the game. There's nothing else around there. Kangaroo's closed by then. So I agree with you.
It's supposed to be a night out, you know. It's not supposed to be such a scheduled thing like a tour, you know, where it's like we're gonna go here and we're gonna go out of our way to go here because it's special. I love the Senators. Clearly, you can see that I love the Senators, and you know I've devoted a lot of my time to this organization. But I don't think if you're spending $20 on parking, you're spending $80, $90. The average family will spend $80 to $90 on tickets if they're not buying it through SeatGeek, which, by the way, go to SeatGeek, use our code Sens Talk. You'll get a 20%, you'll save $10 off your first purchase. Pardon me. I haven't said that in a while because of the whole COVID thing. But, you know, I think overall, you're spending $80 to $100 if you're spending from Capital Tickets, whatever it's called. You're spending $20 on tickets and then on parking. Pardon me, and then you're also spending upwards of $30-$40 on food. So that's $160, $180 to an average middle class family, which is a lot of money for a random middle night out. And then on top of that, you got to drive 20-25 minutes on average, not including traffic, to an arena in the middle of a cornfield in Canada where there's not much around. So it's not a sexy arena location. It's not an attractive spot. And, you know, especially with the shifting economics throughout professional sports where the streaming's becoming more accessible, so less people are going to games. You got to make it as interactive and as easy as possible to go with your games. That's why arenas, generally, if they're downtown, those teams will do well because it's right there. People can just go to a restaurant and be like, hey, F it, you know, let's just go to a game. If you're an Ottawa Senators fan or living in Ottawa, you can't do that with this team. You can't.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, especially now with the teams rebuilding. It's a Wednesday night. You have two choices. You can watch it for free on all these streaming sites, the Sens are probably going to lose. So realistically,
they'll fight though. They'll fight
for it. But I mean, there's no added entertainment. Or you can do like what you said: spend all this money, go gas, deal with parking battles. To what, right? To watch your team lose, especially. Yes, we're beloved Sen fans. We're dedicated, but at the same time, I'm not driving out to Canada to watch my team lose when I can watch it free at home, right? I need some added entertainment.
And I think the Senators stayed afloat for a couple of years after 2014, 2015 because of how well they were actually doing. 2015, they weren't successful. They didn't, 2016, I'm getting mixed up. 2015, they were very successful. That was a hamburger run. I want to talk about that for a second because it really is a damn shame. I think any organization would have been able to build off that, market that run, and create a long-term, lovable effect between the city and its organization. The Senators, in a matter of 5 years, took one of the most unpredictable, crazy, and incredible runs in NHL history. So they were at the top. Things were looking good, 2017, and then they've hit an all-time low, and it's just keep on going down. And I think a lot of that has to do with those comments after Melnick, those comments from Melnick at the NHL Centennial Classic here in Ottawa. That was the beginning of the downfall for me, really drastic downfall. It was always I mentioned this a few times, so I'll keep hammering this point home. There was a gradual decline in attendance and everything because of a lot of circumstances. But once the owner calls out the city after years of supporting them, it's not a good look. And people are not going to be receptive to that. And then you throw in the Carlson stuff. It's a never-ending cycle. It's a never-ending cycle of this organization. And you can look at the Oakland Athletics and the MLB, very similar, framework where they're broke. They have a stadium that no one wants to go to, low attendance, but they got a good team. They got good prospects and a good team. So it's really up to, I really don't want to say this, but it's really up to the National Hockey League to fix things in the nation's capital here in Ottawa, because right now while I'm not for, people telling what private companies can do and what they can't do. It's a private company. You do what you want. That's why it's a private company. But when you're hurting the integrity of the league, and there are some questionable, theories, I guess you can call it, with Melnick and his money issues. Based off what we're seeing, it doesn't look like Melnick can afford afford to have a major league team in any league, especially in the National Hockey League. So if I'm the NHL, I step in, I look at it, and there's been no evidence of anything racist or like Don Sterling. So you can't kick him out, but you can certainly try to facilitate some sort of transaction. Maybe Melnick turns into a minority owner and you get a majority owner there. I think the NHL eventually will be forced to do something to save face before an organization completely sinks to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, I know we're talking about relocation, but Ottawa's not relocating, not until Arizona, Florida Panthers. Like, Ottawa, the worst thing that can happen is that we're just going to be stuck in this phase of no fans, just being one of those dead teams. And Melnick, I know he gets a lot of hate. I know Sens fans aren't really working on our part to mend that relationship, but at the same time, he's not helping either. He refuses to come in on radio in Ottawa, only goes in Toronto. It's a two-way street. If you want to mend it, you got to start the owner. You're the one that started this. You got to fix it, and he's not.
I feel as a fan, I'm a reporter, journalist, blogger, whatever you want to call it. I feel podcasting, YouTube stuff, that's journalism in my opinion, as long as you're credible. So what I will say about that comment about Melnick and both sides need to mend the fence, well, I do agree that I think it'd be great for the fan base, to work something out with Melnick but that starts with Melnick. It starts with Melnick. The fan base shouldn't have to do anything. They're the ones that are buying the tickets. They're the ones that are funding the organization. They're the ones that are keeping this disaster afloat, to be quite honest with you. Without these fans, I can't imagine where this organization would be. They've gotten more fans, I think, per game than anyone would ever even expect in any other American city, because the on-ice product, let's be honest, it's not the the Pittsburgh Penguins from a couple of years ago. It's not an elite level. The end game entertainment is nothing but mediocre at best. And the arena is in the middle of nowhere. So I think when you're talking about mending fences, Melnick needs to go out of his way to kiss the Senator fans' asses, because he's lost so many fans. He's lost his core fan base. And once you lose the core of your fan base to apathy, it's nearly impossible to get them back. So if we're talking about mending fences, it starts and ends with Melnick, because the Senators fan base has done everything they can. They've protested. They've called out Melnick. They've voiced their concerns, and they've even they still go to games all on top of that. So as a fan base, all we want to do is cheer for our team, cheer for them to win, buy tickets, be fans, and just use sports. While of course, we're using sports in great ways these days, but sports are meant to get your mind off things and get your mind off life and just have a good couple hours. So all fans, that's all they want. So it starts with Melnick and ends with Melnick.
Yeah, I think you summarized this segment up perfectly. Sens fans, don't worry, we're not relocating.
Yeah.
But the worst thing that can happen is that we're going to be stuck in this endless phase of what it is now. And the only way that's going to change is if we have a playoff run or if Melnick sells the team. And that's really our two options as of now. So now, Cameron has joined us for the second segment. We just finished talking about relocation rumors, and the second segment is about Borowiecki leaving and the rumors about Chabot being named captain. So any thoughts on that, Brandon?
Yeah, I'll start with Mark Borowiecki, I guess. Mark Borowiecki, if you haven't followed him already on Instagram, it's a great follow. And, I think on top of his on-ice, capabilities and the leadership that he brings to the organization, an organization that desperately needs character players like Mark Borowiecki, I think his off-ice activism is as equal of a loss for the Ottawa Senators. The Senators are not very vocal on social issues. And, of course, they're a private company. They don't have to. But it would be very nice if the organization could support their players, especially during, such time that we're living in these days. Borowiecki, Anders Nilsson, Anthony Duclair, these players are doing good things and are speaking out against things that need to be spoken out against. I really would love the Ottawa Senators organization to, to back them up. But, Mark Borowiecki, as a left-handed defender, you look at the Senators depth chart. There's not a lot of space for Mark Borowiecki. Let's be real about it. There's not a lot of space, especially with the prospects coming up. Artyom Zub being signed, out of Russia. There really wasn't space for Mark Borowiecki, especially on a long-term or even a bridge deal. A one-year deal, maybe, but he clearly didn't want that, and I don't know why he would. I think Mark Borowiecki will command a good amount of money, and compared to what he would have expected last year, he will command a good amount of money and a decent amount of term in free agency. And I think a team like Toronto, unfortunately, a team that needs a cheap defender, I think will definitely be able to scoop him up.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Brandon. I think he makes some good points there. I feel like there's two ways to look at Boro, kind of the signing. You can look at it either from a hockey perspective, obviously, and kind of an off-ice kind of thing like Brandon mentioned. On the ice, obviously, I feel like it's not too much of a loss for the Sens to get rid of Boro. They have a lot of good young prospects coming up on the pipeline on defense, and he doesn't bring a whole lot. Obviously, he had a crazy year this year, but he doesn't bring a whole lot on average that isn't easily replaceable. I think where the Sens get themselves in trouble, and they did it once again, is they kind of shoot themselves in the foot nonstop. They said last summer or the year before, they said that when they were trading Carlson and they were trading Stone and all these guys, that they had a core group of players with core leadership that they wanted to keep to help nurture the young guys and help the rebuild, basically. And if you look at that core was J.G. Pajot, Mark Borowiecki, and maybe Bobby Ryan. Well, 2/3 of that is about to be gone the first summer after saying that. So I feel like, once again, the Sens are just not doing anything to help themselves with the fan base and trying to rebuild some faith, because once again, they say they're going to re-sign a player, and then it's always the player didn't want to re-sign. Well, maybe there's a reason for that, when considering a local guy who not only do they say they're going to re-sign Boro, I mean, last summer, it was the biggest meme of the summer, Borowiecki and his video with Melnick. What happened to that? What happened to that? Like, I don't understand. He was literally the poster boy of the franchise. They chose him. They said, Boro, you are our guy.
I'll tell you what happened.
A little bit, and he's just gone.
Boro asked for money. That's what happened. That's a no-no in the Senators organization. Exactly. You don't ask for money.
Exactly. Someone else couldn't pay their signing bonus for him already, so he's gone.
Yeah.
I think the biggest losers out of this are the Capital City Condors, because they lost Kyle Turris first.
Good point.
And then Boro took over that, and now he's leaving again.
Great point.
And it's just like great people just getting cut. And like with Anthony Duclair, he's getting no backing now, and we needed someone like Boro there who can actually stand up with him. And right now, I think that locker room really, I mean, other than Bobby Ryan, right, it's kind of lacking that now. But obviously on ice, as we all agreed, Boro is not a huge loss, but it's one of those players where you can't, right now in this phase of rebuild, you kind of maybe keep him along just to help the fan base a little bit.
What I would say about that is, even though he had a career year this year, I think, while obviously his stats don't show like an elite level offensive defender, I think when it comes to hockey, unlike other sports, there are aspects of your game that are more valuable than stats. And Mark Borowiecki brings that grit that any team needs, especially DJ Smith. We've seen that he likes the physical type of game. Mark Borowiecki fits the build. That's why I think you're going to see at least 5 to 10 teams fighting over Mark Borowiecki's services once free agency starts in October, which is kind of weird to say, but once it starts in October, because, he's that type of player. He's not just – he can contribute with some goals or some points. He gets 10 to 15 points a season on average, but he can also contribute with physicality and, more importantly, character and leadership. And, Senators love their character guys. So, of course, it's kind of confusing and sad that they're getting rid of Borowiecki. But, I think without a doubt, Borowiecki will be getting a 3-year deal somewhere at about 1.52 mil money.
And on the other news, in Bruce Garriock's article, there was a rumor that Thomas Chabot might be named future captain of the Senators. I don't think this is a big surprise for anyone. What do you think?
Yeah, I was originally on the Brady Tkachuk bandwagon for the captaincy, but once you actually think about what makes a captain, off the ice, I'm sure Brady would have been a hell of a captain. He's the type of leader you like. He's the type of community guy you like. There's something about him, It's in the Tkachuk bloodline potentially, but there's something about Brady Tkachuk that screams leadership, captain, superstar, face of the franchise. But sometimes it's better to have that guy not as your captain, and your captain who by the way, on the ice, your captain's the guy that speaks to the refs after all those BS calls, after all those calls that went the opposite way from what the Sanders would have liked. Do you want a hot head like Brady Tkachuk talking to the refs, or do you want Tom Chabot, who's level-headed and who will maybe help the Sanders long term in the the communication with the refs? I prefer, while Brady Tkachuk can still have a leadership role in the organization, and especially in that locker room, I'd be very shocked if he doesn't already. I think what you want from a captain is a calm-headed, cool, collected player, and that's Tom Chabot. He brings leadership. He brings a skill, which I think is also important for a captain, because a captain's usually a face of a franchise. And Chabot brings all the attributes you want. He's a Canadian version of Erik Karlsson, I guess. Very nice, very calm, a good defender. And I think Brady Tkachuk, I think he's just too much of a hothead. I love Brady Tkachuk, obviously, but I think many can agree he may sometimes go over the line, and you don't want that as a captain for sure.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I mean, it's obviously a stretch, but Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, right? It's like that kind of calm versus, the hothead face of the head.
So like Marchand and Bergeron, I guess.
Right, yeah. Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Brandon hit the nail on the head with that one there. I pretty much agree with him. Chabot definitely is much more calm, cool, collected kind of guy on the ice, and it's kind of reflected pretty obviously over his time with the Sens so far. Whereas Tkachuk is more of that rah, we'll get the guys fired up kind of thing. And I can definitely see him getting the A as soon as they start assigning that stuff. But I definitely agree. You don't really want Tkachuk, the one having to go talk to the refs when he's always all fired up at the end of the game there. Like in the Flyers game we saw, for example, when he's jumping Scott Laughton or whoever it was there. He obviously it's good for fans, and it gets the team fired up over like the long haul. But you don't want that guy being the captain. Obviously, I would have no problem with Tkachuk being the captain if that's what they decide to go. But Chabot, I agree, is a great choice as well.
Yeah, it's definitely the more level-headed and safe bet.
So quickly, I just want to touch
Also, one more thing. Chabot is also French-Canadian in a very French-Canadian market, so that definitely never hurts jersey sales either. Having a French-Canadian captain.
I think that's an excellent point. I think that's an excellent point, because name me one time in Sanders history where we've had a captain who is a French-Canadian. I think especially with Ottawa being a bilingual city, I think that is a point that not enough people, including myself, are speaking about, because look in Montreal with the coaches that they always have to be, French speaking. So I think that's a great point. And I think that's just another reason or another asset on the many reasons and assets to why Chabot should be the captain.
You can't go wrong with Chabot at all.
No.
But yeah, I just want to touch a little bit on the draft. Obviously not go too in depth, but since they're in a pretty good position, you think they trade one of their picks or no?
Well, if you're talking about the third and fifth overall pick, definitely not. I wouldn't. There was rumors, a couple months ago that they would trade 3 and 5 for 1, which I think would be absurd. I think the value would just be off. I value Lafreniere very high, but the potential Ottawa getting Stützle, Byfield, and then one of those two, and then of course Lucas Raymond potentially 5th overall, who I love them to target. I think Lucas Raymond, not the same as Elias Pettersson, but in the aspect of a steal of a draft, I think he could be the next Elias Pettersson, where he's a later 5th to 9th overall type of guy from Europe, who not enough people are talking about, who's going to become probably the best or one of the best players out of the draft. I think Lucas Raymond could be that guy. So out of those two guys, I love that. But the Islanders pick, which seems to be going to be stagnated at 28th, 29th, because it doesn't look like, I predicted them to win in 7 games against Tampa Bay, but they're not looking too good. So it looks like they may be out early. Knock on wood, we'll see. But with the 20th overall pick, I don't know how much value that will even have. That's essentially a second-round pick. So if the Islanders would have fell in one of those first couple of rounds, Ottawa for sure would have traded that pick for a right-handed shot defenseman or some sort of forward. But now, since the value has diminished incredibly, you're not going to get a lot of value for that. You're going to probably have to add too much. So could I see Ottawa trading draft picks, especially that 28th overall selection and the second-round picks? Yes. But I think it will be much more obscure than we would have anticipated, knowing now that the Islanders pick is going to be.
Yeah, there's a couple things I'm hoping for with the Sens draft. I mean, obviously, we've never had circumstances like this before with Corona obviously going on and stuff like that, and a lot of teams are going to be in a cap crunch. I'd like to see the Sens hopefully trade the pick to a team that's strapped for cash, and needs to move an asset on a big contract who the Sens can afford because they have a lot of cap space. I'd say that's probably less likely of the two scenarios that I'd like to see happen, just given the Sens' financial state and what we all know very well about the team.
Yeah.
But if they can do that, that would be amazing. If not, I'd love to see them trade up with all those second-round picks they have, trade that third first-round pick up. Because the point the Sens are at right now with their rebuild, the cupboards are full. They have so many like borderline like B prospects, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What they're really lacking is just those top of the end players like the Byfields, the Stutzels of the world. They need to get another one of those. If they could get a third guy like that, if they can walk out of this draft with somebody like Stutzel or Byfield, obviously, and then one of like Raymond, Rossi, that group of players, and if they can get into that next tier and get somebody who might be falling or a defenseman or Askarov or something like that, the draft is just a huge slam dunk for the team and sets them up really well for the next 10 years.
There's been a lot of talk about Sens potentially trading for Matt Murray. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I made a video on my channel, Sens Talk, about this. If it depends on the ask. The rumors are that it's a first-round pick, and that's already way too much. I value Matt Murray as a mediocre starter potentially for a mediocre playoff team, like a team like Minnesota. Their goaltender would be somebody like Matt Murray. Nothing spectacular, but good enough to get you in the playoffs. He's a two-time Stanley Cup champion. I mentioned this multiple times in my video. You got to give him respect for that. But look at his last 2 years, has been very inconsistent and not even that great, to be quite honest. And on top of that, I'm fine and happy with the Sanders goaltending right now. Marcus Hogberg, I think, should take the leap as a starter next year. Anders Nilsson, I understand he's in concussion protocol. There's a lot of questions about him. So if that is the case, sign a guy like James Reimer, for example. Just a stopgap type of guy who can start for a year or two, give some goalie development for the prospects coming up, and who will not take a spot once those players are ready. And then you got to look in the cupboard, you got to look at Joey Decord, you got to look at Matt Sogard, you got to look at all these great goaltenders. And I'm forgetting a few. There's a lot of great goaltenders. Gustafsson, Mandolise as example. So the Senators are full of goaltending prospects. And in the NHL, Hogberg proved last year, in my opinion, he can take a good share of NHL games. And worst case, if Nilsson's out, you just sign a stopgap goalie for a year or two if Nilsson's out. But no, Matt Murray, in my opinion, should not be on the radar for the Ottawa Senators, especially at the ask that Jim Rutherford, the Pittsburgh Penguins general manager, is asking for.
Yeah, we mentioned many times in 6 These Sports that goalie is the one position where Sens are set on. The depth, I think we had 9 players last time I checked. And just really confusing that why we even go for Matt Murray. Like, we're rebuilding still. It's not like we need a playoff push or anything right now. I say we just go with our prospects, see how it ends up, right? If we get Matt Murray, we'll for sure be overpaying. And with the history of overpaying for players, Burrows, I'm really not thinking about that.
For an organization that doesn't like to pay in any aspect, they do like to pay too much though for acquisitions. I will agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. I think Matt Murray, honestly, is probably a bigger risk than Anders Nilsson, given his concussion history as well. He's not exactly a clean bill of health himself. And he's also going to be asking for a lot of money. Like Brandon said, he's a 2-time Stanley Cup winner. And no matter what, that carries a lot of money, whether it be in arbitration or just contract negotiations in general. And the Sens shouldn't be paying anything like that for a rebuilding team right now who doesn't need that kind of goalie in the system.
Yep.
And to end off this podcast episode, I want to quickly touch on the Stanley Cup playoffs. Dallas Stars make it into Stanley Cup Finals, first time since, I think, 1999.
Poor Jason Spezza.
Thoughts about that?
Yeah, Dallas, great story. Rick Bowness, the former Ottawa Senators head coach from their first years in the league. It's a great story. Rick Bowness, from what I've been told, is, a class act, a guy you can just sit down for an hour and just have a conversation about anything. He's one of those type of people. If you know a person like that, you cherish a person like that. So it's not surprising to me that the Dallas Stars, are doing so well behind a coach like that. While I did pick Vegas to win this series, and I think many people did as well, I think Dallas proved that they are legitimate and they are here for a reason. And I think an interesting stat is Tyler Seguin, 2 goals in his last 20 games, and they're still winning games. So the Dallas Stars have found a way to score goals. Anton Khudobin is playing like a top 5 goaltender in the world right now. And regardless if they play Tampa Bay or the New York Islanders, Dallas will have a good shot at winning this year's Stanley Cup, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny to think that, I don't know how many months ago, the Dallas GM was calling out Sagan and Ben, right? And then now all of a sudden they're in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
It's a wild story how they started off the play-in rounds, right?
Yep.
Lowest scoring, they couldn't score, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. And over on the East, it's kind of similar to the Islanders, how they kind of beat all expectations, but now it's kind of catching up to them. I don't know if they can beat Tampa Bay. It's like a tale of two teams, the Islanders, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. Dallas at one point in last October, was in last place in the standings. I know because I put a bet on them to win the cup when they were in last, October 16th. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, there's been a crazy turnaround for them. I'm happy for them to finally get in the finals. They've just kind of been there and always get knocked out early, kind of like the Sharks the past few years. Hopefully Seguin and Ben can get a cup together. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that at all. Feel bad for Spezza. Obviously, finally leaves Dallas, goes to the Leafs to chase the cup, and that didn't work out. But yeah, there's not much else to say besides what you guys covered it pretty well.
All right, who's coming out of the East? Tampa or Isles?
Tampa.
Yeah, I did pick the Islanders in 7 in my preview on my channel on Sens Talk, but based off of last night's game, even though the Islanders did win, Eberle winning it in double overtime, Tampa Bay controlled every aspect of that game, and I don't see how they lose the next two. I think Tampa moves on to face Dallas in the finals as well. Yeah.
Then who wins, Dallas or Tampa?
Oh, put me right on the spot. I look at a lot of things. You got to look at the skill, but you also have to look at momentum. You need to look at heart, and you need to look at depth. Well, obviously Tampa Bay has all of that. Dallas has something special about it right now. So for right now, before I don't have any stats in front of me, I really don't know anything. And even though I know Steven Stamkos is probably returning to the Stanley Cup Finals for Tampa Bay, I'm going to say Dallas right now, not just because of a hot take. I just love the story. And you'll see in my Stanley Cup Finals preview in the next few days when that's out, what I ultimately come up with. But right now I'm leading Dallas just based off the story. And, a hot goaltender tends to win you games. And a hot goaltender is what you need to win series, especially a Stanley Cup. And Anton Khudobin is playing out of his mind right now. I don't know why that would stop. So Dallas purely based off of momentum and goaltending, I guess.
Cameron?
I'm going to take Tampa. I think they're just too deep for the Stars. I feel like, I don't know. I think the clock's going to strike midnight on the Stars too soon.
Listen, I picked Arizona winning the cup, so my opinion is not valid. But I think Tampa Bay is going to win it too. I think they just have too much talent, especially what happened last year. They're just going to fight and win it. It's going to be a close matchup, but I think Tampa edges it out. But
and I think on top of that, just before we close it out, I think on top of that, with Steven Stamkos coming back, it's game over. I still hold the belief until I get the stats in front of me. I'm still going to go with my original idea of Dallas. But yeah, Tampa Bay, they are due. They are due with this core, and it would kind of be anticlimactic for them to get it this year with no fans, no parades or anything. But I really don't think the players give a damn about that. So yeah, you guys are definitely not on making a hot take at all with Tampa Bay.
Well, Cameron, anything else to say?
Everyone make sure you go subscribe to Brandon's channel, Sens Talk. You can follow him on Twitter under the same username, correct?
And on Twitter @SensTalk_. I'd really appreciate the support. So thank you guys.
You also have a podcast, don't you?
I do, yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. The Best of 7 podcast. Next episode, we'll have Sanders forward Jace Harlock on the show, so I'm very excited to bring that to y'all. But it's we've been doing it for under 4 months now, and the amount of support that we've received is much more than I anticipated. So thank you, everybody, for the support. And if you start following and, start listening, I do appreciate your support very much. And just tweet me, and I'll probably reply to you if you have any questions about anything. I'm very interactive on Twitter @SensTalk_.
As for us, you know where to find us, @613_sports on Instagram and Twitter. If you're watching this YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the like button. We're kind of bringing back the podcast here and there. We're kind of scrambling for stuff to do because there are no sports right now in Ottawa, but that doesn't stop us. Ottawa Sports, your home's right here at 613 Sports. Brandon, thank you again. Looking forward to doing more of this stuff with you. Cameron,
sure.
Want to close us off?
They want to hear to stay out of the box. Come on.
All right, knuckleheads, stay out of the damn box. Hit the like button. Go subscribe to Brandon and us.
You got one try, then I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm leaving. Ice on me, man. I got diamonds, but they say that I don't need them. She gon' need me when she need me. I've been rolling through my thoughts, and you can't beat me.